PK52, the Saturday morning meeting. I want to ramble for a second and give you a little bit of history. So I started selling Toyotas in the 1980s, and I know if you really do the math and everything, that seems like a very long time ago. For me, I mean, it's just a moment in time. I can go back and I can relive the first 4 or 5 years that I was in the car business and all the things that happened to me like it was yesterday. And that'll happen to everybody in life. I'll reflect. There was a moment with Toyota when I finally realized there were specific vehicles that you could sell. If you got them back, you could resell them again, and they were timeless. So before the year 1990, the 4Runner was a very interesting vehicle. It was basically a truck. It had a fiberglass cap on the back of it, and those things were tremendously sought after. Again, it was a 4-cylinder vehicle. There was a lot of manual transmissions. There were some out there. They would always come into the service drive, and I would talk to every single 4Runner owner in the late 80s and just say, is that for sale? Are you thinking about trading this? And the answer was always no, but if I could get my hands on that, it was a one-day sale. That's how fast that this particular vehicle sold. Now, you know, we sold, as we got into the early 90s, the Corolla really became into its own. It was a car that would just last the family forever. The Camry was really starting to make some strides. We had the Cressida. The Celica was a very, very inexpensive, sporty type car that you could go all the way up to the GTS. There was an all-track turbo Celica. Then the Supra Celica came out, then the Supra came out, and so there was all kinds of diversity in the product line for Toyota. But it seemed like to me, based upon where you were in the United States, what demographic you were selling to, what region you were selling in, there were always some vehicles that were just on fire at all times. So as an owner of 16 4Runners, that's right, I've owned 16 4Runners. I would buy a 4Runner and drive it till somebody wanted it a lot more than I wanted it, and then I would sell it. And these things were just timeless. This is a 1990 4Runner. Everything changed in that year, in that sweet year 89 to 90, when this 4Runner came out. Fully loaded, came with a big tire saddle on the back with 31 1050 tires. These were the actual alloys that came on it, and it was just a step above everything out there. Ford had the Explorer, down the road Chevrolet. It had several models of Blazer, and then there was a Ram SUV. And it was an interesting market. This thing was so premier and so bulletproof. So we sold the 4-cylinder still as this new body style came out. The vehicle got heavier. We didn't increase the engine in the 4-cylinder. It was a 2.4 liter electronically fuel injected 116 horsepower vehicle that we couldn't keep in stock. Couldn't keep in stock. And then we came out with the V6. So the V6 came into the truck lineup and the SUV lineup, and the demand for the V6 was gigantic. And still people would come in the dealership and go, you don't have a V8? And so the 6-cylinder gave us that bridge for that consumer that wouldn't buy a 4-cylinder, that would buy a 6, which was very interesting in the next few years. But the 6-cylinder was a 3-liter V6, and it only produced 150 horsepower. So this was a giant vehicle, fully enclosed, 150 horsepower V6, and it was a home run. Actually, the first vehicle I sold, the first 4Runner in this body style I sold, was red, fully loaded, and I got it back from that customer with, 9 months later, and I bought it personally. So that's how much that I really felt like the 4Runner was a big advantage. This brought the truck lineup. We got a V6 in the truck lineup, 150 horsepower. So in the conversion of the next couple of years, the 4-cylinder engine actually had more horsepower than the 6-cylinder, but the buyer mentality was, got to have that V6. So the legacy of the Toyota truck and the Toyota SUV really took off. I found in my career, if I could specialize in something, if I was the expert, and you don't become the expert by telling somebody you're the expert, you become the expert by doing a deep dive. You know, what was the reason why somebody would look at a 4Runner or look at a Toyota truck, and what were the statements you could say to reinforce or to educate that customer of why this is their next purchase? Some of you realize that I started selling in Texas, and Toyota wasn't the hottest brand in Texas. You know, we had a single point Toyota store, and the traffic down the road at the Ford store was gigantic on a Saturday. And we would have a small amount of traffic. It's just Toyota didn't explode on the market until finally people realized I can buy a domestic manufactured car. And I'll give you a story. I told you I was going to ramble. Let me give you a story. So my dad wasn't thrilled that I decided to move my career with Toyota. Long story, but he thought it was not a good choice. He said, if you're going to sell cars, you might want to sell General Motors. And my dad had always bought something from the General Motors lineup. You know, that was his go-to. He was making a statement. I was saying at my grandparents' house, we were sitting out in the backyard in a chair, and he started talking about just stuff. And he goes, well, I don't know how Toyota makes a living. I don't know how they stay in business. And I said, Pop, I don't understand what you're saying. He goes, well, the product never breaks. How do you know when to trade it? And so I looked at him, I said, so you sell your GMC vehicle. When you know it's about to have problems, you pass it off to the dealer and get another car. He goes, yeah, you don't want to pay for those problems. And he goes, but if you have a Toyota, you don't ever need to trade it in because it'll last forever. I don't know if there's moments in time. I really don't. I believe there are moments in time. But that's when I kind of decided that maybe I want to stay with Toyota my whole career. If my father thought the problem with Toyota is the quality was so high that the people wouldn't go and buy another car because they just keep the Toyota forever, then I thought, this is a car manufacturer I want to stay with. So I guess if you really ask me why I spent all these years with Toyota, it was that statement from my dad that compelled me to say, you know what, if that's what the general population thinks about the quality of Toyota, then I'm going to stay with it. So there is so many opportunities. I'm working on a series right now for the Internet BDC. And if you look at averages, and we've talked about this forever, nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, well, hopefully today I'll be average. Is there anybody that says that, that's in a selling space where you get paid based upon your yield? Does anybody wake up and go, well, I hope I can be right in the middle of the pack so I can be unseen? I just don't think that's a deal. There's trainers out there right now, and you see them on the internet. And the trainers aren't going back and training people on how to do the road to the sale. That's not what's being trained out there right now. The trainers out there right now that are pushing the big envelope online are saying you need to reinvent yourself. That's the message. Don't get caught up in the text. Listen to the message. It's saying if you want to be the best, you have to outwork everybody. If you want to be the best, you have to show up before other people even think about getting up in the morning. If you want to be the best, then you need to figure out what you're doing it for. Are you really just doing it for a paycheck? Gang, I've watched so many people in my life fail because they were chasing a paycheck. When you're chasing a paycheck, you're making somebody else rich. Why are you in your space? Why are you doing your business? Is it to better your lifestyle in the future, to send your kids to a greater college, to get your kids in a great trade school so that they'll always have a job and be secure? Is it for your family, or is it for a paycheck? So that's the thing that I want to talk about today is become a specialist. If you're selling anything, whether it's a commodity or you're selling your personal space or your personal time, it doesn't matter. But if you need somebody to make a decision because of what you're selling or who you are, then you need to become a specialist. So in that turn of 1989 to 1991, I became a truck and SUV specialist. Those were the vehicles that were the highest in demand. They were the hardest to get to the dealership. We had to go out and source them from other dealers. I would have customers wait, but these were the higher yield vehicles for me. But what it did was it gave me the ability to build a base of vehicles that I know I could resell again. I could resell a Corolla. I could. If somebody traded in a Corolla, that vehicle would eventually sell. There wouldn't be a lot of profit in the vehicle. It's going to make the next group of people that bought it pre-owned a phenomenal vehicle. But to be honest with you, where I was trying to go with my career, first of all, to be noticed. It's hard to talk about yourself, but if you're not noticed, you're going to get passed by. To give you a little background. So I played college baseball. Some of you know that. Then I had contact. My freshman year, I went to a Golden Invitation Phillies camp. So Philadelphia Phillies. I got contacted by the Phillies at the end of my baseball career. And they knew who I was. They were interested, but they weren't interested enough to invest any money. And so I don't know if you know a lot about baseball and everything, but you may come out of high school and get a multiple $1,000,000 signing bonus because they see some potential in you. And then you start out, they may send you to rookie league or single A ball. You may play single A, double A, or triple A for a while and hopefully make it to the show or the major leagues. There's no guarantee of that, but they give you the money up front. Well, the majority of baseball players that enter into the professional baseball ranks, if you look at it, they don't get a signing bonus, or their signing bonus is so small, it's irrelevant. So two players, one guy got $1 million, the other guy got nothing. They're at the same level. Well, the team is going to move the $1 million prospect up first because they've already got money invested. So it's kind of an interesting thing. In the selling arena, whether you're selling your time, your space, or selling a product, you've got to look at, what are you investing your time in? So for me, back in that early period of time, my go-to was a truck. I was a truck specialist. There were walk-around contests where you could go out and show your skills doing walk-arounds, but I focused on the 4Runner. I focused on the Land Cruiser, and we couldn't get a whole lot of Land Cruisers, but if you got your hands on one, it was sold immediately. And then I sold, the bigger one, got the extra cab truck. Those became my go-to, and that's where my income came from and my loyal customer base. So I would challenge everybody today, listen to the trainers that are online. Everybody out there has something that you can latch onto and improve your skills. Whether they learned it by their own steps, things that they did in the business, or whether they got it from somebody else, a mentor. It doesn't matter where the information comes from. It doesn't matter if you like them personally or not. There's instructions out there that'll allow you to go to the next level. Let's go 2 phases and then I'll close this out. Phase 1 is become a product specialist. In the BDC, we talked about, the average is about 9 to 11% of leads that end up becoming sales. So let's just say 11%. That means 89% of the people that requested information on a product you're selling, and you gave all that information from price to content to everything. 89% of those people didn't come in and buy the product from you, even though you gave them the information they requested. So I look at that and I'm going like, that is the biggest opportunity in the automotive space right now. And I'm sure it is in other selling spaces too. I mean, people will contact you to find out some information and they don't come to you as their final source of the product or the service. And so what am I doing with the 89%? Am I pursuing the 89%? So if I worked in the automotive space and there was a BDC internet manager, and this person controlled all the incoming digital leads, I need that person to understand that I am a SUV and truck specialist. There is nobody in our area, no matter if we own one rooftop or multiple rooftops, that know more about the SUV and the truck market than me. You can't ask me a question I can't answer. You can't get me more passionate about a product than I am about that product lineup. And if you really want to increase that 89% travel rate, then you need to give that lead to me. And so fight for it. That's what all the trainers out there that are online are saying. If you cut through all of the noise, all of them are saying, find a linear path to make yourself better. Not just show up. Find a linear path. If you're going to dig a hole, it would be better to have a shovel than your hands. Use the tools that you have. If you're in the motorcycle space and you're a track person, then you need to know everything about motorcycles on a track and what are the best in all kinds of ride conditions. If you're in the nautical space and you're dealing with people that are trying to become professional water skiers, what boat, what wake of the boat is the best? If you're in the aircraft situation, you know, what size of aircraft, single prop, double prop, jet, you have to know all this stuff. In the automotive space, it's not good enough to tell somebody who'll give them a good deal. Why should they buy from you? And then why should they continue to use your services in the future? I'm going to close out with something I've said for years. If you had a small child and that child got sick and nobody knew what was going on with your child, and you found a doctor locally in your market that said, you know what, I've seen this before, and they took care of your child and your child recovered and everything was cool. If that child got sick again, you're not going to source another doctor. That doctor's yours for life right there. That doctor just saved your child. See, somebody's texting me about that right now. So check this out. If I've got a lawyer who I had a legal problem that I couldn't resolve. So I reached out and I spent money on a lawyer, and they go, that's not a problem. We've seen this before. Bam, bam, it's done. If you have another legal problem, you're going to reach out to that lawyer again. You're not going to go source another lawyer. If you've got a plumber that takes care of the plumbing situations in your house, you're going to make sure that you use that plumber all the time. If you have an accountant that you trust every year with your taxes. And so I don't really understand how anybody could be in the automotive space or the high-end space and try to use somebody different all the time. It doesn't make any sense to me. I just bought a $50,000 pre-owned vehicle from you, and you looked at me when I'm leaving and you go, when you're finished with this vehicle, with this 4Runner, I want it back. Because there's somebody out there that's going to be looking for exactly what you have, and I'll know who they are because that's the way I work, and then I'll get you whatever you want the next time. And so it's not about the first sale, it's about all of the sales. So promote yourself into becoming a specialist. Offer yourself to everybody at the dealership is, I have done my research. Let me show you what I've achieved. Here's all my accolades from the manufacturer. Here's everything I've done right here. Here's my hours of research. Here is my specialty. Let me help you go to the next level and raise the level of your ability. Be focused, be singular. Don't just show up with a purpose. Why are you in the business? Is it to gain better family relationships? Is it to gain a market? Do you want to run for office in your city? Do you want to be well known? So it can't just be for the paycheck, because that's how people get in and out of business, when they're hunting the paycheck. Make your career that next level. Become a specialist. PK52, the Saturday morning meeting.